We're going to talk about training Coco. Coco is my daughter's puppy, which she recently came to. But before I start to talk about Coco, let me back up a little bit. Hopefully this will be a little bit of a fun time for you. I want to talk a little bit about Keenan first. Keenan was my daughter's Elizabeth's first puppy. He was found when he was 5 months old, rescued by my daughter. He was her companion for 16 years. And so she cared for him from the time he was a puppy all the way through him being a senior citizen. We had to finally say goodbye to him after those 16 years in September of last year. And needless to say, that made a pretty big hole in my daughter's life. And as she started to recover and start to look, she thought she would go and find herself a nice older dog. And as she was trolling the websites, she came across Coco. And Coco was 10 weeks old when she rescued Elizabeth. And I do mean that. Elizabeth went to see her. Coco started to fawn over her, and that was it. Love at first sight. Coco is a shepherd. Her mom was a German shepherd. We think that there's some cattle dog there. She has this little teeny tiny tail, and not a German shepherd tail. And if you look at the size of her ears, you may find that there's a little bunny rabbit in the mix too. We're not quite certain. But that's Coco when she was found at 10 weeks. And to that end, let me just kind of offer you a thought here. And that thought is, what's the difference between a baby and a puppy? I mean, there's a lot of us that seem to be on this call that have gray hair, others who just seem to be a black circle. I'm not sure, whether you're older or younger. But if you're a parent at all, what I found is there's not a whole lot of difference. A puppy's furry. You don't have to send the puppy to college, and you can put a puppy in a crate for a couple of hours and leave them unattended and not expect a visit from child services. Aside from that, children and puppies are virtually identical. They are totally dependent, they are uneducated, and they are absolutely self-centered. I found that there's one difference between people and puppies, is that the puppies actually grow up faster. I'm sure you're all familiar with that saying that 1 dog year is equal to 7 people years. The fact of the matter is, the University of California in San Diego had a little bit, and this, by the way, you can use it at, when you go to the bar tonight, and you're trying to get free drinks. You can drop this little factoid. Puppies actually, the curve is much steeper. And if you'll notice that in the first year of life, that puppy basically spans about 30 years of a human's life. It's really fast. And so consequently, as we start to look at what's happening with Coco, it's a pretty quick transition. So with that, I want to take a look at some of the early weeks for Coco. The first thing that we have to do with either a baby or a puppy is supply a little basic discipline. Let me just make a quick side trip here. If you're not aware, every word has 2 meanings, denotation and a connotation. And my little memory gimmick is denotation is a dictionary meaning, connotation is the common meaning, common what you think about. And when we think about discipline, we're always thinking about a punitive kind of a situation, when in fact, discipline is actually comes from a root Latin word that means to learn. And so discipline is sort of important in building self-control, decision-making skills for a puppy. If you're able to control that puppy and she's heading out to the road, you could actually save a puppy's life just by telling her to stop. And so this idea of discipline and training is important. It does require a lot of attention, patience, and understanding, and how you teach is really important. And with that,
okay, Coco, down, Good girl. Good girl. Down. Good girl. You did good. Okay, come on. Sit. Down. Let's try that again. Come on, up, sit. Good girl. Down. Good girl. Good girl. That's good. You're being good. Be good. Be good. Good girl. Good girl. Let's do one last one. Down. That's good. I'll take that. That's a good girl. Down. Good girl. Down.
So a couple of things that I just point out very quickly is notice that Elizabeth's always repeating the command. She lavishes praises, and she doesn't reward less than proper behavior. When Coco kind of jumped at things, nope, get back off, sit down. And the last thing I would say is, you notice she wasn't totally concerned with perfection. Things will happen in time, okay? Training will take many views. I mean, here's one. Coco loves training videos, and there she is watching that. Also, you learn by exploration. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that what you're going to see, I have seen developers do, I have seen Scrum Master do, and I have seen product owners do this. So let me start this video, a little quick 40 seconds. Okay, what is this and what the heck does it do? Let me just see here. Okay, not quite what I expected. Let me see. All right, I'm going to just kick this thing. We're gonna see what's going to happen now. All right, yeah, all right. Oh, geez, what's it doing now? This is crazy. This thing's not going to beat me. I'm going to get this thing. We're going to nail this piece of code down. All right, let's try that. No, gee, ah, crap. Hey, Mary, can you come over and take a look at this? I'm not sure what's happening. Tell me we haven't been there. Socialization, very important. Coco, one of the things that happens with a puppy is they have to be vaccinated for something called the parvovirus. Literally, it'll tear up their heart and their insides. So she couldn't get out right away. So one of the things we had to do in order to keep this smart German Shepherd stimulated was take her for car rides, and that worked out pretty well at first. She got to see a lot of things. It kept her little brain going. When she finally was fully vaccinated, we were able to take her to the beach. Notice that on the center side that there's still a leash on that puppy. She's still not ready to handle everything by herself. And then finally, when we're able to let her get to a dog park, she got to actually play with the other dogs. And this was kind of a lot of fun because you got to play follow the leader and see what was going on. So that was one of the important things. You need a little downtime. So, of course, Coco gets an opportunity to stretch out a little bit and relax. That's one of her favorite things. Also, watching television. She's absolutely fascinated by the Pixar intro. And she loves to watch shows and learn from Doug and all of his friends there on the Disney Channel. All of that is part of Coco's training. Okay, it's all of the things that she's done. We've kept her stimulated. We've kept her going. A lot of this was driven by a guy by the name of Brandon McMillan. And this was a master class that we had. And Brandon actually went through and taught how to teach down, for example, with Coco, which you saw earlier. but at the end, he puts key points that you're supposed to remember. And the one that I wanted to point out here was that the conditioning is a 10 to 15 minute sessions 3 times a day. So it's not only training initially, but it's practice, practice, practice. So let's bring this to Agile. What do we need to learn? How many of you remember a while back that there was a poster that said, everything I needed in life I learned in kindergarten? Well, it's kind of the same thing. Everything I needed to learn about Agile, I've learned in the Agile Manifesto. And like life, Agile is a team sport. And I would say that what I'd like to remind us all about today is there's a constant need to go back to the basics. If we go back to the Agile Manifesto, there's a lot of things there. I am not going to go through these documents. I'm sure you've seen these documents many times. But what I want to do is point out just a couple of things. First of all, individuals and interactions over process and tools. I don't think that this is a fluke that individuals and interactions are first. Process and tools are good, but they're just that. Tools enable us to work with people and meet their needs more effectively. But it's the people that are important. I like to say I have a great toolbox in my basement, but I'll never have a close relationship with a soccer wrench. Okay, and that's where I think we are. So individuals and interactions. If you go to the Agile Manifesto website, there's a screen up there for 12 Agile principles. And again, the two that I want to draw out right now are projects are built around motivated individuals. Again, individuals and interactions. And the interaction part is, if you're going to communicate, the most effective thing is face-to-face. I think that that's one of the most important things. And we're going after that actually in the Pit Agile meetup here. The last thing I go to is something called the Scrum Guide. This is on a website called scrum.org, Ken Schwaber's organization. In that Scrum Guide, there are Scrum Values: commitment, focus, openness, respect, courage. And if you look at these things, and we're gonna talk about these in a minute, a lot of these things have to do with achieving the goals and achieving the product delivery. But I think there's some deeper things that we can take a look at. So again, what does Coco have to do with Agile? Why did I start with Keenan and Coco? I started with that purposefully, guys, because this really allowed us to take a look at the raw material we're working with. Keenan, the story of Keenan really told us about Elizabeth. Okay, she had a puppy that was 21 weeks old when she started. That is completely different than a puppy that is 10 weeks old. For example, Keenan was housebroken. Coco wasn't. So that had to be taught. There was a lot of things that Keenan had already assimilated. Coco hadn't. Keenan could go out. Coco couldn't. Okay. The other thing that the reason I went into Coco's background is because although we didn't know much about what her past life was, what we did know was her lineage. Her mother was a German Shepherd. She has some cattle dog in her. Both these dogs are high energy. They're smart as whips, and they need to be socialized. And if you don't keep them active, they really start to get into a lot of mischief. I've worked with a lot of people that are like that. If you don't keep them busy, they start to get into mischief, you know. And then in terms of socialization, if we're not connecting, the German Shepherd may tend to overguard and actually become aggressive. So all of this stuff becomes very, very important. And what I would like to do is suggest that, like Coco and Keenan and Elizabeth, every one of us comes with a past. Every one of us has our own set of unique talents, hopes, and fears, whether it's us personally or the team we're working with. So the first question I'd ask of the group here, this is a bit of a rhetorical question, is upon what are you focusing? Is it a task or a project that you're involved in, or is it the raw material you've been given? I will say as a personal point, one of my regrets, I've lived a very privileged kind of life when it comes to my job. I've worked with great people, worked on some great projects, but if I had any regret, it was that I was too project and task oriented. I really didn't pay a lot of attention to people, or frankly myself, early on. And I think that was a bit of a detriment. So what I'd like to suggest is, maybe not today, but tomorrow, the next day, take 30 minutes. Take a little inventory. What's your background? What have you been through? What are your experiences? What are your strengths? What do you need to work on? And what you may need to work on may be technical skills, or it may be people skills, or it may be something in between. But take a little bit of that inventory and take a look at that. The other thing is taking a look at the team and asking basically the same questions. Who the heck are they? What are their skills? What are they aspiring to? And the most important thing is, how do I as a team member help them? Coco and Elizabeth, yeah, okay, a dog, a person, but they actually were a team. And so one of the things that Elizabeth is constantly asking is, what does that dog need? Why take him in a car? Why take him to a dog park? How do you socialize this dog? How much training does that dog actually need? Brandon McMillan's masterclass actually came up with 3 principles that I found that were really good. The first one is control, train, and treat. Okay, and the next one is train at the right time. When the energy is right with the dog, and train when the dog is hungry. If that puppy isn't hungry, all the treats in the world aren't going to motivate him. But man, get that puppy a little bit hungry, yeah. Now all of a sudden the treat is what the sun rises and sets on. And then the last one is this idea of KISS. There can be 100 commands that you can train that dog. You have to decide what's important. Let me look at that first one first, because I think this is really one that we want to start with. And we'll dig into some of these other ones in a minute. Control, train, and treat. Brandon McMillan says you can mix up the order. It'll just be harder and it'll take you longer. So what I would suggest here is we do the same thing with ourselves and other people in the team, and ask ourselves again, what's the control point? With a dog, the control point is a leash. Okay, we have other control points. Alex Powell, a couple of months ago, I think now, did a great presentation on how owning his data leveled up his life. That was a control point. For us, or for the team, the control point can be some of that inventory and how we then respond and work that inventory. Or for the team, one of my favorite things is a team working agreement. When that team first forms, and this is where I think Tuckman's stages of group development, which we've all heard is my gold standard, forming, storming, norming, performing. The team working agreement allows us to move through that forming, storming, norming, performing much faster. So, getting things like the definition of done. One of the tenets of the Software Excellence Alliance is producing that high quality software. And part of that is deciding when it's actually done. Schedules and meeting times, who approves the changes, how do we handle technical debt, version control, something as mundane as that. The more agreement you have within your team, the better off you are at monitoring what you're doing as a team and as a team member. The second thing I'd say is, when are you training? And I put in here learning. Again, control, train, treat. Okay. Remember, Coco trained by watching television sometimes. That was great. It just stimulated her mind. Okay. One of the things that we can do, and when we're training, is take the opportunities every single day. In a stand-up in Agile, or in a retrospective. Most of us have seen the couple of 3 or 4 questions we ask at a retrospective. What went well, what didn't go so well. What should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? Or alternatively, what have I learned? What still puzzles me? Okay. What I'd like to suggest is you can add something like that team working agreement to the retrospective. As a team member, not necessarily the Scrum Master, although this is a good thing for a Scrum Master to do, but as a team member, we're all invested. Pull that out of your hat. Bring it up on your computer, okay? What have we said our team working agreement was, and did we achieve that? Okay, so there's all sorts of things you can do. When you establish your control points, bring those in as learning elements, even in a stand-up in the morning. There may be something you can do there. I'm going to add one thing, and Brandon makes this point. You notice that Elizabeth used a treat to get Coco to lie down. Okay, she could have beat the dog with a newspaper. But one of the interesting things here is pain is certainly a motivator. But one of the interesting things there is we get used to pain. And not only does it demoralize, but it no longer motivates. Am I going to get another beating? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, give me another beating. I'll move on. So again, this idea of control, train, treat is really important. And then the last item is, what are your treats? And this could actually be a couple of things. This idea of taking time to relax, like Coco, do a little, I love to learn stuff. So for me, one of my treats is actually spending time learning something about something I may not need for my job. Okay, making time to explore. When I was doing some development, it was really nice to have a week where I could dig into something and just explore it. And there's no telling what will happen. And then of course socialization. Again, I'm a bit more of a technologist than anything else, and so to be honest with you, having a happy hour after our Pit Agile gathering was not, somebody had to bring that up to me. I just never thought about it, So one of the things I would say is we can get out and socialize a little bit. And as I said, you can do more than one thing at a time. We have a minute for this story, if you guys don't mind. I worked with a fellow who was the lead engineer at this company that actually ported Linux, real-time Linux, to embedded computers. It was Friedman Wagner Dobler is the guy's name. And he had not only started continuous integration and automated testing in that organization, but he got to a point where every night would do a new build. And every morning would all get together, and there were 2 Sesame Street dolls that Friedman owned. One was Dancing Elmo, and the other was Oscar the Grouch. And if the build went well, if it passed all the automated tests, Friedman brought out Dancing Elmo and he'd turn it on, and Elmo would dance, da 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 da, and off we go, and we'd all have a good time. If the build broke, he brought out Oscar, and Oscar was handed, okay, to the guy who broke the build. Now that sounds a little punitive, except that as a team, we started to view that as just a fun moment. So now I could make fun of my friend Fred over there, or Mary, or whomever it was that broke the build. Now Oscar actually did 2 things. He did serve as a little motivation, because you really don't want to break the build very often. You really want Oscar the Grouch to move to somebody else's cube, okay? But the other thing that happened was, if Oscar stayed in my cube for too long, somebody came over and asked how they could help. And that was really important. Being able to know that team was interested, that if I'm having problems and I keep breaking that build, how can they help so that this doesn't happen? How do we get Oscar to move cubes? So this idea of treats and part of the control teach or control train and treat idea is really important. I've been babbling here for a little bit. I'm going to just stop for a second. Thoughts, anything that you guys want to bring up at this point? I apologize. I get going and I forget.
No, just that it's really interesting and very provocative. I mean, it's gives you lots of ideas.
Yeah, well, and honestly, thank you, Julia. I mean, honestly, part of this, I personally don't think I'm saying anything terribly profound today, but sometimes it's good to go back and think about how these basics really apply every single day, and how simple examples in life will take us forward.
No, I actually think it's very profound. I think it's really good.
Well, thank you. Anything else from anybody? Let me go to the next one. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. We had the Agile Manifesto. We had the 12 principles. We had the, you'll notice I didn't highlight everything on that list. Everything in the Agile Manifesto is really important, but we can't do everything at once. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are your top 3 to 7 items? One of the things that Brandon McMillan had pointed out was there's over 100 commands that you can teach a dog. And as he says, if you teach a dog 100 commands, they're going to get a C+ in every one of those commands. If you teach a dog the 7 most basic and common commands, he gets an A+ in all of them. So what I'd like to suggest for us is if we focus on just the top 3 or 7 things that we really need to do, both personally and as a team, we're going to start to improve constantly. Okay, and remember, how often do we repeat that training? With a dog, he wants 3 sessions a day, 10 to 15 minutes per session, to reinforce. And this is one of the keys. We humans develop a habit pattern. When I was learning to flight instruct, one of the things that my instructor taught me, Marge said, Jeff, it takes you 4 times longer to unlearn a bad behavior than to learn it correctly the first time. So don't be surprised if some of this baggage we bring to the table takes us a little while to unlearn. Don't get frustrated, either with yourself or with your team. Class socialization. My friend Dave McKenna says it's all about that icky human stuff. And that really is the bottom line here. The Scrum Values, commitment, focus, courage, openness, respect. I will pick a little bit of bone with what they do here. Those first 3, they focus on delivering the product. Commitment to delivering a good product, focusing on software quality, courage in making bold decisions in developing that software, or that hardware. And then openness and respect, okay, that has to do with humans. I don't think that's true. I think commitment, focus, courage also deal with our friends, our teammates. Okay? If we are committed to each other and making ourselves the best that we can be, and I say that both as a team member and personally, then this becomes the success becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Focus, again, having those couple of 3 to 5 to 7 different points we want to look through this sprint or this week or this year, month, something short term, I think is very important. And again, focusing on our team and what we're doing and how we're doing it is just important as focusing on the quality of the product. And then the courage, Agile teams are supposed to be self-organizing. It's really hard to hear that I'm ugly, but I'd rather hear it from you, my friend, than some stranger that doesn't love me. And that takes courage to say things gently and in love and such. And I think that too often as our friend Dilbert here has pointed out, you know, oftentimes, and especially in a forum like this, we're just basically an emoji on the screen. Well, I think it's more than that. You know, we've got to take special attention to make that human connection. This is the quick summary, you know, because I'm about done here. Take stock of yourself and your team, okay? Who are you? Who are they? And what are people aspiring to? What do they need? What are your control points? Pick those few top things. Incorporate the learning into your ceremonies every day. That's probably one of the hardest things to do, guys. I'll tell you that right now. It's really tough. But if you can practice every day by incorporating those 5 Scrum values or other things that you've pointed out into your ceremonies, I think it'll make an enormous difference. That's really kind of the sum and substance of what I had to talk about. I've got a couple more slides here. I'm just going to real quick, a couple of references for you. You can look at. The internet is littered with things like the team working agreement examples. I just picked out 2 at random there. And that kind of settles that. Again, I'm going to stop at this point, talk about anything you want to talk about, and then we can talk about this Pit Agile gathering in a little bit. Thoughts, comments?
Questions? You guys can feel free to unmute to ask questions, or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine too.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jeff. I think you have a good first name, but I just don't like all that hair on the top of your head. So there, I said
Jealousy is
something.
an ugly emotion, Jeff. That's all I can say.
That's right. That's right. No, I think this is good. It was a good way of breaking it into some real practical things in life and get people to look at this as more than just a method for doing software development, just like all of the other methods and things we deal with in the world. And also it's good to see the distinction between the Scrum, the method, and Agile, the manifesto, or the best practice.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Any other thoughts?
I thought your point about, okay, here's one from Steve Schwab. Can you talk a little bit more about control points? What are some examples, spectrum, you've seen on teams? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. As I said, one of the top ones for me has always been that team working agreement, because it's too easy to jump in and just say, okay, you know, we've got a job to do. Let's go. Without sitting down and really kind of defining that can be a black hole, because again, as a team is a self-organizing entity, if we don't know what we're expecting of each other, how do we keep ourselves honest? How do we grow? So that's certainly number one. You know, I'm certainly not an expert in TSP, PSP. I attended one session with Daryl Davis a while back. He was kind enough to do that presentation at Pit Agile. And one of the things that struck me, and I think Dave Toma here is going to be doing something on his dashboard. You know, those things are things that, you know, I would go through, and whatever tool you have available to you, be it something as simple as a burn John chart or a team dashboard or you know, whatever you happen to have, those can be control points, but it's all predicated on what you're working on this week or these next 2 weeks. So I go back to, first of all, what are the key things that I'm trying to work on this week? What didn't go well? What do we want to improve? What do I want to improve in me? What do we want to improve as a team? And then apply the tools that we have. I know that was kind of a broad brush, but probably the best thing I can do at this point. I don't know whether does that help?
Thank you.